I'm going to start it with a Thomas Edison quote. And he said, the doctor of the future will actually give no medicine, but will be interested in his patients and in the care of the human frame. That's the body, the diet, and in the cause and prevention of disease. Disease is dis-ease. It starts in our mind, our focus. Then it moves into what we fuel the body with, and all of health is affected by what we're putting in our body, our soul, and our spirit. So just to share a story before we get into our fourth point, our focus needs to be really strong. And an old story that I was told, I'm sure you guys maybe have heard this, but what is a full life? Well, I was told this story at a presentation, and there's a man there saying, here's a cup. Is it full? He showed it to us. It was empty. And he said, is it full? It's actually full of air. So you could say it's full. He then went and took a bunch of big rocks, and he put the rocks in there. And he said, is it now full? And those big rocks were full right to the brim. Some people said yes. Others said, no, it's not full. He then took some sand, and he put the sand in the cup. And he asked, is it full? People again said yes. And some people said no. It's all based on our thinking. Finally, he asked, after he put in water, and he filled the cup up full of water with the rocks and the sand and the water, it's full. And he said, is the glass or the cup full? At that point, everybody said yes. The moral of the story was in his next point. If I put the water in first, there's no room for the big rocks or for the sand. So this hit me like a punch in the face. What is really important, you put in first. The big rocks, those are called priorities. That focus is critical. And you can go online, you can research many, many great thought leaders on it. You know, The One Thing, you can go on with Tony Robbins. There's so many thought leaders out there. They all speak the truth about focus, control that, put energy into those priorities, and control your thinking and your language. The last thing is our body, but it is the easiest thing to fix because it will have an impact on our mindset and our focus. So I hope that story brought some value as it did for me. But that really segues then into how important to health and healing, or the prevention of injury and disease, is rest and recovery. Because I get caught up in doing, but I forget that my body only heals when I sleep. Not when I'm sitting still during the day, when I sleep. So Thomas, as a certified trainer and RMT, can you expound a little bit on the whole concept of health and healing and how important rest is to recovery?
Yeah, I think it's truly, they're still learning more and more about the importance of rest and sleep. Specifically, there's a lot that we don't even know about the human brain and the recovery it makes during sleep. I mean, we of course do recover some bit. Like if someone comes in for a massage therapy session, we can help realign the fibers. We can help start that healing process. But like you said, the majority of our recovery is in our sleep. And I mean, most people know this, but you really should be looking for around 7 to 8 hours of sleep. There's some science saying you can sleep too much. It kind of has that feeling of a bit of a drag on in your day, if you like, when you're oversleeping. But then there's obviously counter research as well, saying some people get up to 10 to 12 hours sleep a day. I don't know. I certainly couldn't find the time now, let alone when I have twins. Uh, but I'm one of those that tries to aim for about 7 to 8 hours. I function fairly well off about 6. But for when my training is up and I'm putting in some hard workload, some tough volume, I definitely aim to try and get my sleep up. So again, it's you got to ask each individual, how much have you been doing? How much training have you been putting in? How stressful has your day been? And really, you should be aiming to get in a good amount of sleep and recovery for post workout days, and especially pre-events and stuff like that. If you're ever doing any long distance events or endurance events, you've got to make sure you're getting sleep in. But yeah, it's no real hidden secret in that matter. There's a lot of importance for the sleep and for rest and recovery on a physical level.
So also a question, I agree with you on sleep. I don't think many of us, especially entrepreneurs, leaders, get enough sleep in a day. I shoot for 7 hours. There are days I only get 6. And there's been times where I've only had 5 because the schedule is so just racing. That's where it's at. But I know by the end of a week of that, I'm in deficit. My body doesn't function. I start to get sick. I'm tired. I can't do it regularly. So the goal being, shoot for that 7. Try to maintain that. Don't be afraid to rest, relax. But I think also, just to touch base on this, when you're working out hard, you get sore. You get injured. What would you recommend? And what, as well, Bob, I'm curious on your experience with injury and recovery around the area of massage, around the area of modifying exercise through injury versus stopping. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, totally. I mean, modifying movement, that's a great way of putting it. For me, I'm very fortunate to be part of a clinic, a multidisciplinary clinic called Restore Rehabilitation, where I'm the RMT there in Surrey, that works with quite a young, driven team, and we all kind of work around the same values that movement is a key part to recovery, to full recovery. As you said, through exercise, or you are microfiber tearing the tissue. When we injure the tissue, take it a step further, maybe a strain or a sprain, you have to give your body that time to rest. That acute phase, maybe 3 to 5 days. Rest, ice, compression, elevation, follow the same principles, and then doing some manual therapy, getting the body moving. And it's important to keep that movement within the pain-free limits, right? So if you have got a bit of a bicep strain, you're certainly not going to go loaded initially. You might be looking to see how much range of motion you've got within pain-free. You're going to test that and start to move that. And then eventually, when you're getting nearer to full range of motion, you might be doing some active stretches. So you're actually assisting and holding that. And then eventually you'll progress into doing some maybe eccentric strengthening with just resistant bands, where eccentric is the lengthening phase of the muscle. So when we're extending the elbow before we jump into like concentric or isometric strengthening. So there is definitely phases of that. So it's important to reach out to somebody or find a health professional that knows what they're doing, that knows what grade of injury that you have. So it's important that you're addressing it the best way. But it's kind of old science where we just say rest and don't do anything. Like, for instance, with whiplashes, we used to put on a neck brace, right? And then 6 weeks, 8 weeks of the neck brace would come out and they barely move because they've just basically completely atrophied those supporting phasic muscles there, or tonic muscles of the neck, and they're just kind of stiffen themselves up even more. Now we get whiplash. Obviously, we assess for the transverse ligament in the neck, make sure things are safe there, and then we get them see where their movement's at. And you have to really keep movement as a key part of recovery, but within your pain-free movement, and making sure you're doing that safely with a health professional. Yeah, that's key. And to touch back on the sleep part, because I like didn't really provide any groundbreaking knowledge or information, but regarding to like uncommon truths with sleep, I think the importance of having a pre-sleep routine is vital, and that might be different for everyone, but it's highly important to look at, are we out of technology for maybe 60 minutes before? Put your phones away for 60 minutes before. You want to kind of really dampen down the alarm systems. So I don't really like to have my phone away, or at least in a drawer or face down, so there's no blue light. I love sleeping in a really dark room. Some people like to do a stretching before bed, or some meditation before bed, something to really slow you down, some prayer before bed, whatever that may look like. So a pre-bed routine is vital to having good sleep, so that we actually access the deeper REM sleep, which really is where we hit great recovery time. Some people say, "Oh, I slept 7 hours," but if you go through like my Garmin Fenix watch, I can go into my app and it can show me what phases of sleep, depths of sleep that I was in. So sometimes the sleep isn't as good as we hope for. I think a pre-sleep routine may help people with that.
Well, that's a really good comment. How about you, Bob? What are your thoughts on that?
Great comments. Thanks so much, gents. This is actually very inspiring for me personally. I remember a story Zig Ziglar told many, many years ago. He was 50 years old. He had just come very, very close to bankruptcy, and he was grossly underfit, we'll call it. And he decided to make some life changes about 50 years old. And in terms of recovery, what he decided to do was go out. Because he traveled a lot, he was a salesperson. He decided to simply walk around the hotel room that he was in. And it was really cold out where he was. So he just simply said, "I'm going to walk back and forth in this hotel room 20 times tonight." And that's how he started. Is he just walked back and forth in the hotel room 20 times, which when he moved back into his house, he said, "I'm just going to go for a walk around the block once." And so he moved that from the hotel room to his house or to his block, and he walked once around the block. And he made a commitment to himself to do that every day or every second day, but increase it as he felt it was appropriate, right? And pretty soon, he was walking many blocks, which turned into running. And then he became like a long distance runner process. So lots of people out there that they get discouraged when their current reality, they want to go and get fit, and then they try something that's a bit too much for them. So I'd say one of the uncommon truths about this is that you have to start small, start with baby steps, move forward, don't hurt yourself, and rejoice and celebrate the small incremental improvements you make. I was watching this young man in the gym, quite a thin young man, probably 16, 17 years old, Thomas, and he grabbed the 40-pound weights and he started to try to curl them, right? It's like, "Hey, buddy, how long do you think that lasted for, right?" And he probably got really discouraged. I watched the look on his face. He tried to get that first one up, and he put him back, and then he went on to another piece, right? He just didn't have any. Started too big. It's like start small, baby steps. Don't hurt yourself, and just celebrate the small accomplishments, and keep in mind to keep improving towards your long-term goals. Because this, Thomas, true or false? This is a marathon, man. This is not a sprint.
Totally, man. Yeah, I mean, I've seen a couple of these incredible long endurance athletes, these Ironmanners, and that's kind of one of my life physical bucket lists, if you like, in my book life. I'd like to be able to tick off that Ironman, and I'm not built really for it. I've recently started training towards it, but it's not something I'm looking to do even next year. You know, I when I do it, I want to do it well, and I'm training in the back of the mind That's the macro goal, and you got to have that, some micro goals to build you up towards that. One day I'll be able to put that tattoo on my calf or my lats of the Ironman accomplishment. But yeah, it's a lifestyle. Right?